Hi, Joe. Hi, Liv. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Ah, you're okay.
Guys, I was really excited to bring you on. We obviously work together. You're on the HMO Mastermind program, and you've got a great story. And I think what you're doing right now will resonate with a huge part of our audience. So, for the benefit of maybe some of our listeners who don't know too much about you guys yet, Liv, could you tell us a little bit more about what you guys are currently doing in property?
Yeah, so we are a rent-to-rent and HMO management company in Liverpool. Specialised in HMOs really,
Mm.
but recently we've started taking on a couple of single lets and stuff like that under management, but primarily, it's HMOs for students and professionals.
And how long have you guys been doing this for now? How long have you actually been running this business?
It's just coming up to 2 years this May, probably in about 3 days is
Mm.
the date when we set up the company. So yeah, just under 2 years.
And how old are you guys? I know you are significantly younger than me, and you might be the youngest that we've had on the show so far, but just remind me, how old are you guys?
I'm 24 on the
Okay.
27th of May, so 23 currently.
I'm
Yeah.
23.
Yeah. So you guys, I think it's fair to say, still quite young, and building a business at your age, I'm inspired sitting on the other side of the mic, you know, hearing you guys building a business at this age. And I can't remember how old I was when I started mine, but I was a little bit older than that when I actually started building my proper management and investment business. So 2 years ago, you guys decided to start this property management business. I guess the obvious question at that point is, with all the things that you could have chosen to do, and Liv, you were already you got previous experience, haven't you, managing an estate agency branch? Joe, you previously studied some economics at college. You guys had very good jobs at one of the big banking groups, which is where you met. Why on earth did you decide to start a property business and specifically a HMO and rent to rent business?
I think at the start, contract and job that we were in at the time, it's not very secure, and lockdown had just hit, and we've been saving for a couple of months, and it just felt the right time to start investing the money and put it in the right direction. And we'd heard the rent to rent, we knew about property was a good vehicle to do the things that you want in life, and it was at that time we explored different options, and we come across rent to rent and HMOs, and from there we just took on, really, didn't we?
Yeah, that was it. It kind of gave us, the option to save, and we always knew we wanted to put it into something, and we explored, are we going to get a single let, do it up, rent it out, but we kind of wanted something which was a bit more fast paced, a bit more cash flow, and that's when we, kind of stumbled
I
across
think
rent to rent,
because
really, didn't we? And then
because of the security of the job at the time, cash flow is really important for us moving forward. So rather than buying a property and holding the property, we wanted to create like a cash flow business.
So you guys had you had pretty good jobs, but you were contracting, so that
yeah,
that could have kind of been taken away from you, I guess, at fairly short notice, could it?
yeah, that was why it did pay well, but it would be a case of guys, the contract's coming to an end. Your last day is Friday, so
Okay.
it was quite risky. But we knew that if we just stuck at it, done every bit of overtime we can, it'd give us the money to eventually do something ourselves.
Okay, great. That sounds like a really smart solution. And I suppose then, am I right in thinking that going down the route of building a business like a rent to rent business, was that because building a business out of actually buying and owning assets looked like it was going to be too difficult, maybe from the point of view of maybe starting capital or experience? Talk me through the decision to actually go down the route of building a management business as opposed to trying to build your portfolio off the bat.
Yeah, well, I'd probably say, when you're buying, you've got to take into consideration we were contracting, so getting a mortgage with only being, what were we, 21, 22 at the time, getting a mortgage anyway is going to be a struggle at that age. Being in contracting as well, trying to get a mortgage based on the fact that you're self-employed and you're not contracted for a certain amount of years, stuff like that. So I think we knew we could do it somehow, but it wasn't going to be there and then. We knew it would be a process where we'd have to wait for a little bit before we could buy, and we just wanted to go head first straight away. So I think that's why we chose to do more management as opposed to buying.
I think
at
as
the
well,
start.
we really wanted to create like reoccurring income quickly. So at least one of the two of us could leave our jobs once lockdown had come to an end. And I think in buying properties, the process would have been a lot slower and a lot more difficult at the time.
Yeah.
I think that that is a really, really honest answer that a lot of people need to hear. And I hope a lot of people take that away. You guys have obviously very consciously looked at the landscape, looked at the the resources that you have and the challenges that you might face doing certain things. And I know from working with you guys that building your own portfolio is absolutely a big part of your longer term objective. But
Yeah.
this sounds like it was a really strategic decision to actually focus your efforts and resources into a business that could still generate you a substantial amount of cash flow, give you that security that you needed, and having not to contract, and then
Yeah.
kind of bridge you from where you were into hopefully, and I'm sure quite soon, actually starting to buy and acquire assets
Yeah.
that you actually own and hold. Have I kind of got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely the end goal. I mean, we'd love to own a HMO. We'd like to get into development, like like yourself and stuff. So that has always been the end goal. But I think people will probably say what we've done is slightly more risky than just buying straight away. But I suppose you've got to to take the risk to get the cash flow, and then that's the end goal really.
I say this to a lot of people, and managing property is definitely not my most favorite thing. You guys know that. All of our listeners know that. It's not the sexy bit of investing in HMOs, but it is an essential bit. But the one thing I would say is that building my own management group, it has been a key to unlocking so many more things. It's been a fantastic, and still is a fantastic source of, like you said, Joe, recurring income. It's very stable, it's very consistent, it's very predictable, which is great. And I think certainly what I love the most about this model, and I know we're going to talk about this today, because I've got a lot of rent to rents as well, is that we're building security for several years. So as long as you get some of the fundamentals right, which we'll talk about, when you've got long-term contracts, actually you're building in a huge amount of long-term and very predictable recurring income, which I think doesn't matter what industry you're in, what sort of business model you're building, that is quite a unique and incredibly powerful thing to have, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us then, 2 years in now, you're still looking very young and fresh. So what have you achieved in that 2 years? Kind of just top line numbers. How many properties are we managing now?
So we've got 31 houses, 17 of them are HMOs because we've kind of fell into the management side of things as well, and I think that goes hand in hand with the rent-to-rent business. But a lot of our landlords have single let properties, and it makes sense for us to be their one-stop shop. So we're not going to turn them away. We've taken them on at the same time. So we've got 31 houses, 17 HMOs, 113 HMO rooms, but all in 127 tenants.
I mean, guys, that is so impressive. I'm so proud of you guys. I've been working with you for a while now, and I know how hard you work, and you work really smart as well. But I think, irrespective of who you are as people and the market conditions, that is a seriously impressive achievement. 31 units, a lot of HMO rooms, and it's still just you two, isn't it?
Yeah, just us two.
Not for long.
It's so impressive. So of course I wanna get into the detail of how we've done that. Now we've got a case study today to talk about, which is, other than maybe one or two of the rent case studies that I've talked about of my own on the podcast, I think it probably is one of the first rent case studies that we're going to have talked about on the show. So I'm really keen to talk about that, and it's quite an interesting project. But let's rewind a little bit. 2 years ago, just getting started. Broadly speaking, Joe, if you were to zoom out and look at what you've done in that 2 years and how you've done it, how have you gone from zero to where we're at now, 31 properties?
I'd probably say it's down to giving more value than we charge for, if that makes sense. Going above and beyond and putting in the hours, but constant weekends, every single day, working all the time, just going consistently at it. I think that's probably the one thing that we have consistently done from the off until now, and we still do.
And I feel like when we've sat back and zoomed out ourselves and looked at the deals and looked at where we've got the houses from for marketing reasons, we've actually realised that most of our deals have come from word of mouth, so people recommending us or landlords then buying another house and, you know, just giving it to us. So it's quite funny when you do look back and think, well, all the hard work we have put in it has paid off, because most of the deals have come from being recommended by other people.
Do
We
you
haven't
guys?
really started to market until I think March time this year. So everything we built up until that date was through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So
Which is amazing, really. Do you guys feel yet? Because obviously this didn't happen overnight. It happened over 2 years,
Yeah.
and as business owners, I think it's really easy, and I recognise this myself often. I kind of lose sight of the progress that's been made, and every day feels, you know, as difficult as the day before, even if we've just done another great deal. Do you
Yeah.
guys stop to sort of take check of the progress you've made, and do you kind of do you feel that, and do you celebrate that, or do you feel like it's still very much heads down? You know, it's just you kind of ignore it, and it kind of, it's almost like looking in the mirror every day. How does it feel for you guys? 'Cause I think this is important, because a lot of people, 31 properties sounds like a huge amount. It's a decent sized portfolio to be managing, and that's generating a good amount of income, and probably far exceeded, I imagine, your very early targets.
Yeah.
So just tell me how you feel about that now, like pausing and thinking about that. Does it feel like this huge achievement, or does it does it not, because it's been 2 years?
It's funny because when you tell other people, they make you think, oh wow, look how far we've come. But I think because we're both in it ourselves and we're both so driven, I mean, it's like, oh, we've got a new deal, high five. And then it's like, right, okay, where's the next one?
Yeah.
And that's it. I think sometimes we should maybe step back and think how far we've come. But it probably works in our favour that we don't, because it makes us push even more and try and get more deals. Would you agree?
yeah, I think we actually understand that it's important to sometimes reflect and look back at how far you've come. But that's probably the biggest thing I struggle with personally. Like one good thing happens and I'm like straight away on to the next.
Yeah.
That's just how we work, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I think that is part of the entrepreneur's curse. We're
Yeah.
never satisfied. We always move the goalposts just that little bit further away. We like the goalposts, I think, quite sadistic, but to always be a certain distance from us.
Yeah.
And so every time we get that little bit closer, we push that goal a little bit further away.
Yeah.
So Joe, you said that Liv, that word of mouth has been a big part of how you've been able to grow this portfolio. So working with landlords has brought more landlords, and I would say I completely agree, and I've seen that in my own business and many other businesses, you know, with the people that I work with as well. But how did you get the initial contacts in? How did you actually generate those first inquiries? Was it agents? Was it direct? Was it letters? Talk us through that.
Funny enough, it was through Gumtree. So we tried to contact agents. We didn't really get the best of luck, and we were just exploring every option. It was right in the middle of lockdown, so I mean the market was the quietest ever. But we went away because obviously we'd only just started the business. So I come across a property on Gumtree, didn't I? Gave the landlord a call because he was struggling to rent the rooms out due to everyone leaving. At COVID, people had gone, not paid rent. And it was a humongous 10-bedroom in Sefton Park, which is a really popular area in Liverpool. And we went to view it, didn't we? And then I met the landlord there at first, and then you come round for a second viewing, and that was how we found it. We basically stumbled across it, but to this day, it's been one of our best earners.
Yeah, I think it's important as well. Like from the beginning, we've looked everywhere for property. So the first one was on Gumtree, and then that landlord happened to be selling and recommended us to the new landlord, who then gave us our second property to manage as a management, not rent to rent. Their property was on Facebook, and the builder of that property then wanted us on board for his, which was our number 4, and then he was building number 5, and that was our 5th property, and it's just kind of gone from
like
there,
that,
really.
hasn't it? And then the landlords who bought that have then gave us about 4 to 5 houses, single lets as well as HMOs. So it's just gone gradually like that, and then we've got extra managed ones off our first landlord as well.
So you've been finding deals, you've been managing relationships, you've been managing cash flow and finances, and starting to get your head around how to run a business and the mechanics of that. What about the practical elements, the property management, doing the refurbishments, maintenance? Have you guys been hands-on yourself. I know a lot of people starting businesses, and I remember myself, it was me. I would pick up the paintbrush, I'd paint the walls, you know, I'd do whatever repair and maintenance that I could, which to be fair is quite limited. I'm not great at it. But have you guys been doing all of that? You know, did you guys do that as well?
Yeah, and we didn't stop, did we? We were getting to some houses at like 5 a.m. in the morning and stay until 12 o'clock at night. We were just doing as much as we can when we could. I think the last deal we've just done will probably be the last one where we will do ourselves, really, because managing the business day to day and then trying to do a refurb as well, we wouldn't be able to do both.
I think it's important to outsource, but also in the early days, like for me, I like to get stuck into every part of each process. So in the future, nobody can pull the wool over your eyes and you know actually what goes into every stage. So when you do outsource, at least then you've got some sort of control over what's going on at the property.
Yeah.
I think when you're in that very early stage of your business, bootstrapping is really, really important. And you kind of have to do what you need to do. Very few businesses of that age have the capital and the infrastructure to just outsource everything. And I think to some extent, there's this message out there, you know, about outsourcing everything, but the truth is you can't always afford to outsource everything, and sometimes outsourcing a few too many things can come at the expense of bringing on the next deal, which itself makes further outsourcing and actually building the business more difficult. And I think it's really tough to find that balance, particularly in businesses like this one that we're discussing, because there are so many moving parts and there are so many things that you could do and spend your money on to make your lives a little bit easier. But it does sound like you guys are at a point now where you probably need to do that.
Because we've always prided ourselves as well on giving the best service possible. I know if we were stuck into a refurbishment now, up a ladder, painting the ceiling, and you know, it'd be obvious that if someone reported maintenance or there was somewhere we needed to be, and you know, that would take a slip, and we just don't want to do that. We've said, you know, we've had a one house mentality from day one, and you know, if we're, as I say, mid refurbs, then that is going to slide, and that is going to slip. So that's something that we don't want to do.
What have been the most challenging aspects of doing this so far? What do you find the most difficult about running this type of business and building this type of business?
I'd say personally for me, because I deal with the maintenance, dealing with contractors and builders, because the contractor and builder that you decide to use is also a true representation in front of the tenants of yourself. But at the same time, there's only so much control you've got over them turning up on time or them actually turning up and doing the job as they should. So I think that's going to be a never-ending thing, where that's probably always the most difficult part of the job.
What do you think, Liv?
I'd probably say trying to find maybe the balance between, you know, trying to be in tenants' shoes as well as landlords. You know, kind of trying to see it from the landlord's point of view, but also trying to see it from the tenants. And, you know, if tenants are saying, well, this hasn't been sorted there and then, and it's like a little bit like you're playing devil's advocate, really, is that the word to say? You know, when you're trying to make sure that the landlord, you know, is happy as well as the tenant, and there's like a happy medium. I'd say that's probably one of the hardest part, because tenants don't understand sometimes when they're frustrated, but you've got to kind of get them to understand, well, listen, we will sort the issue, but it just can't be done there and then.
Yeah.
So I'll probably say finding that balance, but once you've got it, it's good.
I always say to my team, you know, 50% of what we do is manage expectations. And sometimes it's our own expectations, like you said, Joe, with people like tradesmen and third parties that we've got to rely on, but aren't necessarily always the most reliable, and managing the expectations of tenants. In fact, just before we hit record, we got an email from a group of tenants saying that they've been overcharged the rent for the year and all sorts of things, and they haven't, but they are so adamant that they are right, and come across, you know, as though they're well-researched legal experts, and this sort of stuff's actually really challenging, and the more tenants you have, the more it happens, the more time that it takes up, and the more headspace that it takes up. So I completely sympathise with you on that, but it is part and parcel, and we do have to do it. And I think it's more. Would you agree that now, more than ever, you know, it's one of the most important things, you know, managing those expectations and actually delivering a customer service, you know, at a particular level?
Yeah, 100%.
So let's talk about this deal. I want to get some context around what these projects in your business look like. So Joe, you put a fantastic case study together. Can you tell us a little bit about this project? Just sort of, first of all, headline numbers, kind of number of rooms, where it is, type of tenant, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so as the property is right now, we've got 6 professionals. It's a 6-bed HMO, 3 bath just on the edge of Liverpool city centre. But we're actually going forward, going to move this to a group of students, and that's what it's going to be from July this year.
That's already let out now from July to a group of students, is it?
Yeah, so the professional group leave, or professional individuals leave mid June, and the new student group move in on the 1st of July.
Okay. And when you found this deal, this was actually, I think there's an interesting story behind this deal, isn't there? It wasn't one that happened kind of immediately. You had to go on a few dates to get this deal, didn't you? Tell us about that process.
So we found that, so where the house is, there's 5 purpose-built HMO properties all on the one street. They're all built exactly the same. 2 of them are flats and the other 3 are houses. We went to view, did we go and view? We went to
3 or 4.
3 or 4 of them at the time with the agent, and we agreed a deal on 2 of them. Then it was a lot of back and forth with the agent. They wanted to sign their agreement, which put us down as a tenant, and it'd leave us pretty vulnerable. They were not happy to put any of our clauses in. They wanted us to sign it with them as opposed to the landlord. There was just a few things which, is a non-negotiable to us really when signing a contract, because there was stuff in there which covers both us and the landlord, and it wasn't in their contract. So that kind of put an end to the deal, really, didn't it?
Yeah, we tried everything. We tried to negotiate, but there was absolutely no movement from the agent's point of view. And they were telling us it was the landlord who was giving them instructions to do this, but I really don't think it was. And then in the end, we actually found out it wasn't. So it was after that, where that property had actually been going to it, or one of the properties that we had accepted on was going to a sale. The guy who bought that found out that we were involved at some point, and then decided to give us a call and just wanted to know more about what was on offer.
Yeah, and then you had a really good chat with him. We went round and, just at the viewing ended, he said, well, there's the keys if you want it. So, and that's how we got that one. And he was really happy. He didn't have a clue about the landlord,
anything to do with the contract. Yeah. He was not aware of at all. It's not clear that it was the agent.
So it was sort of all happening via an agent initially. They wanted you to jump through hoops that you just weren't prepared to. So in the end, you just walked away. And then it just so happened that you ended up getting into contact with the landlord, ended up doing a deal directly with them. And what was the sort of timeline there? Was this 6 months after? Was it 3 months after? Or?
We first made contact in April.
And then we took it September.
September, we actually signed the contract and got the keys. Okay. So a long period, really, where we were obviously thought the deal had gone.
So this didn't all happen overnight then, did it? This actually took quite some time. Okay. And what did the initial agreement look like then? What were the broad terms that you agreed with this landlord? What did you say that you would do? What did they say that they would do? And what were you going to pay them?
So it was guaranteed rent. At the time, we were given 1117. That was for 3 years. We covered the bills. We'd done a light refurbishment. But maintenance, certificates, all of that was 100% of the landlord's responsibility. Okay.
Which is actually, I think, a really great tack that you guys took, and I think shows a huge amount of sort of business sense that you guys have got to have pre-planned that, because that really helps with your overheads. So 1117, did you say, Joe? That's what you're paying for?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And did you have to do a refurb?
Just a cosmetic one. So because we'd only signed for 3 years, obviously the budget was only small. We didn't replace the kitchen, we wrapped it instead, and we just modernised some of the furniture in the rooms, carpet in the living room, and we just done fresh paint throughout as well. So we spent 3,648 in total.
Okay, so you kept the budget super lean, and it looks fantastic. We've got pictures of it here in the case study. So for obviously all of our listeners who want to go and check out this case study and have a look at that transformation and all the numbers, it's all there in the roadmap. So you signed a 3-year agreement, and at the moment, you talk us through what's changed, because this property and the project and the contract and the agreement that you've got actually now looks quite different to that initial agreement that you made. So talk us through how that's changed and why it's changed.
So I think coming into this year, with the utility prices, everything going up in April, we kind of reviewed the whole portfolio and worked out ways that we could stop the effect affecting us as much as it might everybody else. And we were going to increase the rents. That was something we planned to do anyway, but we wanted to really reduce the cost. So the first thing that we thought we'd do was get rid of the professionals and put students in, and we can get away with the council tax that way. But also we thought, let's tell the landlord that we'll do not just a cosmetic refurb, we'll put new kitchens, bathrooms in, make the property the best property on the street. And that's what we've now decided to do. We've put the offer to the landlord, they've accepted. So 7 years from now, that's how long we've got the property for instead of 3.
Yeah.
And we're gonna, it's a budget of 12,500 for the refurb. And then we're gonna cover the certificates, the maintenance, and we're gonna be able to do that by doing the refurb to a good enough standard in the areas where the high maintenance costs come, so we can be able to cover the maintenance.
So I think that this bit is really, really important to highlight. And I know in part this has all come from us working together. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of getting as much juice out of the squeeze as you possibly can. So in this example, you'd met the landlord, you'd negotiated a good deal, but actually just extending those terms meant you weren't really having to do any more work, but more than doubling the potential profit in the deal, because you're doubling the timeline on it and giving yourself all of that security. And at the same time, by injecting some spend into the property, by really improving it, actually forcing the rent up, so creating a bigger margin between what you're paying your landlord and what you're paying your tenant, which is so important. So at the minute then, or sort of looking ahead, Joe, do you think you're more profitable? Will you be more profitable on this project next year after doing that, or have you just sort of navigated the rise in utilities and costs and sort of kept yourself in the right position, on a level playing field?
Yeah, so should we not increase the rents on the back of the refurbishment, we'll have pretty much stayed at the same profit line as we were before the increased bills. However, I can't see how spending 12,500 in the way we know it needs to be spent isn't going to increase the rent. So we made a last minute decision, I think in March, to put students in the property. It let after 2 weeks, and that's pre the new refurbishment that we're going to do. So I can't understand or can't see why it wouldn't increase the rent.
And how much do you think you'll be able to increase those rents by? Is it £10 a week, £15 a week?
At the moment, it's £102 per person per week. We're hoping to get £110 per person per week.
Which
110
is easily achievable based on the location and obviously the condition it's going to be in.
So that £8 a week per tenant doesn't sound like a huge amount, but one of the things that's really apparent with rent-to-rent deals is that the sensitivities on those sorts of numbers are actually huge. So in this example, I've just done a quick calc, but actually £8 a week across 6 tenants is actually over £200 a month. And that's all on your bottom line. If that's just, all profitable money, that's just a pure gain that you've made by forcing that value up. And yes, there's a bit of a repayment period on the refurb, but your cash flow every single month is going to be much better.
Yeah.
And I think, I'd be right in saying that what you've also done at the same time as forcing the rents up, you've actually built in a huge amount of rental covenants, because now you have a much better product that tenants will prefer to live in than maybe the way you'd initially done. Do you think that that's fair as well?
Yeah, totally. And I think this is like a new structure that we're going to move forward with on all of our deals going forward, and that's why we put it to all of our current landlords, because at the moment we're not covering the things like maintenance, and the refurbishments that we're doing are only cosmetic. So there's a huge benefit to the landlord at the moment that all the deals that we currently have on the old structure. Yeah,
and on the basis of that, we actually reduced the rent by £117 to the landlord per month. So obviously we're saving that. So, the landlord's thinking, well, it's worth taking £100 less to have £12,000 spent on their property and know that that's £1,000 guaranteed for 7 years.
As well as not have to pay any maintenance or over the cost of certificates too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you force the value up, you're going to be able to increase the rents, you have increased the rental confidence, and you've also simultaneously reduced the amount that you're actually paying your landlord and extended the term from 3 years to 7 years.
Yeah.
Sounds like an absolute no-brainer, but sometimes these decisions are not that obvious, are they? Because I don't think it was until fairly recently that you guys looked at the portfolio in a slightly different way and saw all of this kind of potential that had been sort of temporarily locked up, but now you're actually going to your other landlords with similar proposals and actually extending this across your whole portfolio, aren't you?
Yeah, I think at the time as well, we actually looked at rent to rent as almost like a short-term period for each property. But when you look at it properly, if you can extend these deals for 7 to 10 years, spend a little bit more, it's a bit like a sliding scale. You just push it on a little bit further. It's a much more of a business as opposed to a short-term solution.
Yeah, because, I mean, as you know, the years, I mean, we're already in May, and I feel like it's only just been Christmas, and, 3 years can just go like that. So there's just, you're so busy day to day, and then it's like, oh, right, okay, we've only got really a year left on this deal, and for a business purpose, it just didn't seem like that was the sustainable. Yeah.
It's really great to hear that you've got this very long-term view on the business as well, and I think that that's so important with rent to rent. And I think there's so much more that you can get out of the model if you have that long-term view. I think it is tough to win in the short term on rent to rent. I think if you compromise on too many things, you end up with properties that aren't that great. You end up with difficult tenants. You end up with a lot of problems. You end up actually building a business that isn't really that conducive to getting you to where you want to go. It's not making that much money. It's taking up all your time. It doesn't actually serve the purpose of getting you to where you want to go. But I think the way that you guys are doing it is absolutely brilliant. So, Joe, so those numbers then, I think, what are you netting per room then, from, let's say, next year on this project?
From next year, it'll be £216 net per room for the 6 bed.
£216 per room, and we've got 6 rooms, so just about £1,300 a month net. Does that roughly capture any? Does that capture any of your assumed maintenance costs? Do you need to add any more costs onto that, or have you made some assumptions
so
on that?
Doesn't include taking off the maintenance, but that's the point to build up that margin. So when the maintenance does come,
Absolutely.
It doesn't hurt the business as much.
Yeah. We've included taking off the bills on that cost, so
bills and certificates stay fixed.
Yeah.
So all of your bills and all of that's covered. Just a bit of maintenance to come off there as and when. So let's say there was £50 a month or even £100 a month in maintenance. That's a deal that's doing £1,100 a month, and you've invested somewhere between, let's say, probably around about £15,000 in it, and you've got it secured for another 7 years. So if I times that figure by 12, it gives us the annual figure of about 15,500. If we times that by 7, and I think this will blow everybody's mind, and this is the power of rent to rent. That's 108,000, nearly 109,000 net on one deal. One deal. So for everybody listening, imagine what that looks like if you have 31 deals. Now, I know not every single one of your deals looks the same, but this is why I get so excited about this model, and this is why I'm such a big fan of rent to rent, because if you do it right and you understand how to construct deals like this, it's incredibly profitable. I think it's fair to say, and would you guys agree, that actually replicating a figure like that, £15,000 a year net, that would be really quite difficult to do with something that you had to buy and own. You would need so much more capital, wouldn't you, to actually buy and hold that deal?
Yeah, I think that's the good thing about rent to rent. The barrier to entry, or the cost to entry, is so low, and it's a massive plus when you are young and you've only got a certain amount of savings to be able to go and grow that property business.
Yeah.
So I'm always conscious that it would be easy to make the podcast sound like a highlights reel, and we've definitely just focused on an incredible deal. Sounds amazing, and maybe we made it sound like it was quite easy, just renegotiating all of this stuff. What advice would you share to anybody who was thinking about getting into rent to rent? And let's be realistic about. We've talked briefly about some of the things that you found the most challenging, but what are the struggles of building a business like this? You know, where does your time actually have to get spent? What problems do you actually have to deal with and overcome on a day-to-day basis doing this?
I'd say on a point of the biggest tip for somebody to get into it, I'd say having 5 really good deals is going to be a lot better than 15 okay deals. And I know since speaking to you earlier on this year, I think that was where we were heading off in maybe the wrong direction at that point. We just wanted every deal out there and to get a little bit of money from everything. Whereas to being a lot more efficient is definitely more sustainable.
Yeah.
I think that is a superb piece of advice, Joe. And yeah, you know, that could have come straight out of my mouth. That's a fantastic piece of advice, and I completely agree with it. What one piece of advice would you share, Liv?
I'd say, because I primarily deal with the tenant side of the whole business, I'd say putting yourself in the tenant's shoes is so important. I think the fact that we are young is a benefit to us as well, because I can understand what tenants want when they're looking for a house. And, you know, if you make sure that you put good tenants in the property, you know, that service then trickles down, you know, to the landlord, because ultimately then the landlord's getting somebody in the property who's going to pay the rent on time, look after the house, and they're going to stay for a long period of time. So the service you provide to the tenants only, you know, like I said, trickles down to the landlord. So ultimately you're giving the great service to both of them. But yeah, I'd just say your tenants, you know, are the bread and butter of your business. So to put yourself in their shoes and look after them is key for me.
I think also touching on like the challenges and stuff like that, I think there definitely is some hard times and things that you probably haven't had to deal with in the past, but I think landlords and tenants alike as well, and it's just something you've got to deal with scenario by scenario, and every time you go through that one scenario, next time if it comes up again you will have dealt with it then, so you get better with experience all the time.
You guys obviously had built a really great business, and you were doing some really, really great things. And we've been working together since earlier this year, or maybe the back end of last year. Do you think that your business would look different if you hadn't surrounded yourself with other people doing this, and with people who, you know, had the experience of already doing it? Do you think that your business would look any different? Or do you think you would have got there? Maybe it would have just taken you a bit longer and a bit more difficult.
I think it'd look very different if you didn't surround yourself with people, you know, you meant to surround yourself with people who are doing the same thing but better. You know, you strive to be like, you know, being in your mastermind groups and meeting every single month with people who own other HMO businesses or development businesses. It kind of sets your goal to where you want to be, and you're having the right conversations day after day, and being around positive people and stuff, it does make a huge difference.
What do you foresee looking ahead then? You've done incredibly well in the first 2 years. The landscape's changed a little bit. Things are more expensive. The property market is incredibly hot, as we know. How has your business evolved, or how's your idea and your goals of this business evolved? And what are your plans, let's say, for the next 2 years? What do you want to achieve? Is it the same numbers? Is it more? Is it less?
I think we'd like to do exactly what we do in the cash flow rent-to-rent business, but just keep adding to that, and at the same time reinvesting all them profits into our own portfolio, our own HMOs, our own single lets, developments in the future. I think it's important, once you've created the cash flow, to then reinvest that into a capital pot and keep churning it out like that way.
So do you think that in the next 2 years, what is your target of, let's say, new rent-to-rents? Have you set yourselves a target of actual kind of numbers that you want to achieve in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so at the moment today, we've got 127 tenants. By the end of this year, we'd like at least 200.
Because last year's goal was 100, so we've said, you know, this year we'd like to double that and make it 200.
And what are you finding? Is it getting easier to do this now, or is it getting tougher? I've been asked a few times recently whether investing in HMOs is the right thing, whether building a rent-to-rent business is the right thing for new investors right now, because of all of these things that are going on in the market, because of these challenges. You guys are doing it. What do you think? Is it getting easier? Is it getting harder? Can anybody still do this?
I think it might be getting harder, but I think if you do the due diligence and you really do pick out the good deals as opposed to just any deal just to get the numbers up, I think it's always going to be something that works.
Yeah.
I think that's what's important, is to make sure you do, when I go back to saying 5 good deals, not 15 okay deals. If you have that mindset going forward, anybody, when you're doing rent to rent or buying HMOs, that mindset's key, I think.
And I think, there's thousands of HMOs in Liverpool. We've only got 17 of them. So, they're out there. You just need to go and get them. So
I think that is a great bit of perspective, Liv. That I like to often remind people of that as well. For a lot of people, to achieve what they want, it means tapping into a tiny, tiny fraction of the market, doesn't it? And there is so much opportunity. There are so many landlords out there. There are so many landlords who struggle with difficult managers. There are so many landlords whose circumstances change and they need help and support. And I think rent to rent gets a lot of flack, and I think some of it is deserved. I think some people don't do things in the right way, but there are people like ourselves doing it the right way, creating great accommodation, managing tenants, and really prioritizing their well-being. And that's an incredible service to be able to offer people. And I think it is absolutely a service that a lot of people want. Not everybody. Not every landlord is prepared to give up a certain amount of their rental income for the benefit of having all of that guarantee. I think that guarantees are going to be a big part of the PRS in the future. I think more and more landlords are aligning to this idea. And I think, and I'm prepared to stick my neck out on this, but I think we will see the idea of rental guarantees becoming more and more mainstream, not just in the HMO market, but I think we'll see it on the high streets as well, with the agents managing the single lets.
Yeah, I agree.
It's been an absolute pleasure getting you guys on the show, and you know what? I'm really excited to bring you back on in 12 months and see just where you are, the pace that you're moving at the minute, and your attitude. It's difficult not to get excited about it. I'm so excited for you, and I think everything that you've shared today, I think it'll inspire a lot of people, and I think that it's a really good and honest version of what is possible here. It's certainly not easy, but I think for anybody doubting whether or not it is possible, and I think you guys are based in Liverpool. Liv, you said there are a lot of HMOs there. There are definitely other people trying to build rent-to-rent businesses, but not everyone's succeeding what you guys are. I think there's a lot to get right, but I think for anyone listening to today's episode who is doubting whether or not they can do it or whether it's still a viable model, I think there's the answer. The writing's on the wall. It definitely is, but you've just got to know how to do it, and you've just got to do it in the right way. You've got to be prepared to walk away from deals, and you've got to be prepared to work incredibly hard to make it happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Where would the best place to kind of come and check you guys out be? I know there'll be a lot of people after listening to today's episode want to come and follow you, see what you're up to, and kind of maybe even get in touch and see whether there's any ways to work with you. So where would the best place for anybody be to go to?
Instagram probably be the best place. My name is just Olivia Marr, spelled Maher, because everyone spells it Marr.
Yeah, mine's just JDuggan22, and I think that's what we're using at the moment. We're using Instagram to document our journey, and we've recently started the YouTube channel just to show people a little bit more about what we're doing as well.
Yeah, and to show them what we look for when we go around our HMOs. So that's all, isn't it? And
you do some great videos, and it's really nice just being able to peer through that window and seeing and kind of sharing that process with you. It's really fun and I think really honest as well. And JO Property, that's on. You've got an Instagram page, but is that one specifically for your tenants?
We've tried to use our personal one to show people more what we do day to day on a personal level, and the general runnings of a business, and then keeping JO Property Group as we're tenants, because we're getting quite a lot of tenants come through now to be on the waiting list, or if there's a room available, they'll book maybe a viewing through there. So advertising the properties on that, and then keeping our other ones as more personal day to day.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can't wait to get you back on in the future. And thank you so much for coming, sharing your story and incredibly inspiring journey of just 2 years in property. Well done, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having
us. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.